Well, welcome to our first ever episode of Bits and Bants, the developer marketing podcast. Super excited about this being our first episode. We've got two of the best in the game from Block. Eva Sasson and Rizel Scarlett are joining us for this one. And I can't wait to dig in. I was preparing to do the introductions here and was just genuinely so impressed by how much you both are involved in when I was doing my background research here. So Eva, I want to start with you. We met for the first time at CatchyCon a few weeks ago, where you shared a fantastic session about scaling developer programs from 1 to 10. And beyond being just impressed with like the breadth and depth of the session, I was equally impressed by your background, right? You've been at Google, you've been at Twilio, and you're now the head of developer programs at Block. Plus, on top of all of that, you're working as an investor and advisor for a lot of startups and developer-facing companies. Tell us more about all of that, how you manage it, what you've been up to.
So I, as you mentioned, run developer programs for Block. Right now we're focused on the Block open source tools, which has been so fun. In my experience, I've worked at 4 API platform companies and 2 open source tools. I'm super passionate about developer tooling. I was early at the team in Twilio, was there from startup Twilio days through the IPO, went on to be the first product marketer at Sentry, which is an open source error monitoring tool, and then was at 2 small API companies, and before joining Square to run the developer experience for Square's developer platform and API platform, and now made my way over to Central Block, which is definitely, I would say, one of the highlights of my 10 plus years so far. I really love working on this team. And I'm just overall very passionate about enabling developers to build what they want to build, and making sure developers have a good experience in building what they're building, which is kind of what fuels me to kind of keep moving in this space.
Rizel, this is the first time we're meeting, so it's super nice to meet you. I'm glad you could join us. Saw a little bit of a different background from you, right? Like equally broad across the number of companies you work for, but you come from an engineering background. You have your Bachelor of Science in Computer Science from Boston University, same as my wife. So like go Terriers, love that. And again, you've worked at a bunch of places, GitHub, HubSpot, a lot of other companies. Now you're the tech lead of open source development at Block. And also find your time to do some other stuff as an advisor at the G-Code House. So same kind of question, like tell us more about that. Would love to hear about the intersection of what you're doing professionally and then also in your advisory time.
Yeah, so for me, I kind of had like a windy career path, I would say, where I started off first off, the way I got into tech is I Googled like what jobs make the most money in a short time, just because like, financially I wasn't able to do college the same way as other people. And I came across tech, went into IT, became a software engineer, like you said, through a coding bootcamp. But during that time, I also got my degree at BU, as you mentioned. And then once I was a software engineer, I liked it, but I had come across this organization called G-Code that you just mentioned, and I wanted to be a part of it. It was in its very early stages, and it was really exciting because I got to build out the entire program, teach other women of color and non-binary people of color how to code. And I was like, this I really, really enjoy. Like I like coding, but I like enabling and empowering people to understand how to code, to understand how to like use different products. And I was like, I wish I could get paid like a software engineering salary for this. And I found out like developer advocacy is like quite similar to that experience that I was doing of like building out curriculums, creating presentations. And that's how I kind of just pivoted into that role at GitHub. Had a great time there, got exposed to open source, and now I'm at Block and been learning so much about just leadership in general, and in addition to like developer advocacy and empowering engineers. And on the side, since G-Code was something that I started out with, that's been like a passion project of mine, and I go back and advise from time to time.
I think for right now, right, the thing that brought you two together and the reason we're here, you both are at Block. Really interesting company doing a lot of innovative things. And I'm really curious, what is Block doing right in the developer space? What are the programs you're excited about? What are the two of you doing? Eva, I think I'm going to start with you, and then we can take it from there.
I was about to say, Rizel, should we talk about Codename Goose?
Yeah, definitely.
Codename Goose is new to the world. It's our local AI open source agent. Rizel and I are both working on promoting this in different ways, but as a team. And I think that Codename Goose adds something really interesting to the current AI builders ecosystem, dev workflow, dev tooling ecosystem. It's open source, which is really different from kind of the other players out there. We're not trying to sell anything. We're just trying to help developers, which from a developer marketing standpoint is like really a fun place to be.
Yeah.
So I have really enjoyed working on this tool. It started as an internal tool that our internal developers built for themselves to make themselves more efficient in what they're building. And one of the ethos behind Block is open source. And so we open sourced it just, to support the broader ecosystem. I'll pass it to Rizel.
Yeah. As you mentioned, it's an open source AI agent. It's also an MCP or Model Context Protocol client, and it's local. So it's I want to, I guess, take a step back a little bit. I think sometimes when people think of Block, they might not think of us in the developer ecosystem as much. Maybe they're thinking fintech, and maybe some of them are like, what is Block even? And just because it's like, it's made up of multiple organizations like Cash App, Square, and all of that. And people may not even be aware that we have this like open source section. But we are, like, I would say we are doing so many like amazing things in the open source ecosystem. First of all, when Anthropic announced Model Context Protocol, like the spec, we actually had a hand in like contributing that. And from what I've seen, Goose was one of the first like AI agents that were leveraging MCP, and then other AI agents that were doing that followed after. So I think a lot of the stuff that we're doing right is we're a bit ahead of the game in that sense. People just may not realize it. And then I think our team as well, like the team that me and Eva are on, is very, very like a powerful team, right? Like, I don't know if you all have heard of Angie Jones, but she leads our team. And she's like amazing at everything. And we do a lot of like making sure we can connect to developers in different ways, whether that's through live streams. Like, we have very exciting live streams where it's not just we're chatting with people. We've done like vibe coding challenges. A lot of our, it's like we get really creative and fun. So I can go on forever, but what I'm trying to say is the content we create and the way we connect with our developers for our open source projects like Codename Goose, I think is unique.
So, and you both touched on something that I think is a really important cornerstone of what you're doing at Block, but isn't necessarily something that every company does, which is the importance of open source. Why is open source so important to Block, and why is it so important to developers?
I would say open source removes a barrier to entry in terms of trying a new tech. It also allows for a little bit of democratization in how the tool is built and maintained. So there's that aspect to it as well. As someone who's worked both on open source tools and paid API platforms, when you're asking someone to input their credit card before trying something, on the marketing side, it's just a huge barrier. Developers want to be able to play around with something before they commit to it. And especially when you're talking like infrastructure, like the kind of further back you go in the stack, that becomes so foundational that you're really not going to like change it. Like once a backend developer builds with something, they do not want to have to redo it. It gets more and more complicated. And so being able to test the waters a little bit helps a lot. There's also security reasons why people choose open source, especially if it can be run locally versus in the cloud.
There's a couple important points. I mean, there's the whole thing is right, but a few things that come up really frequently, and you heard this a lot at CatchyCon when we were talking about this in San Francisco, is that idea of frictionless developer journeys, right? You want to reduce any friction in a developer going from 1 to 0, from 0 to hello world, whatever that might be. And again, open source is such an important part of bringing that to life in different ecosystems. Another one of the parts you talked about is community, right? So much of, I think, what makes developers a different audience than a lot of other B2B audiences is the importance of community. And you get a lot of the developer advocacy coming in there as well, right? And that overlap between dev marketing and dev advocacy. So Rizel, is there anything else you want to add on to the community aspect of open source?
Yeah, I mean, I had an additional thing outside
please.
that. It's just important overall for companies to be involved in open source, because we depend on a lot, like most organizations depend on a lot of open source projects as well. Like we have like these paid things going out there, but underneath the hood, there's like one maintainer that's been maintaining this one project and trying to keep it running just for us to be able to make money. So I think it's also good for us to either give back and support those maintainers, because that's a lot of work, or also to create our own open source projects and help keep the ecosystem running. So I guess that's community-ish, but that was just like an additional thought that I had in my head.
No,
yeah,
super important.
Plug, like, from kind of the seat where I sit.
Yeah.
DevRel teams are so crucial. Like I could not do anything that I'm doing without Rizel and the other dev advocates on our team. Like they are really the heart and soul of building community, and like they're the champions for the developers. They're the ones that are giving the feedback back to the engineering team. Like the DevRel team is like front lines out there.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important to have kind of like the marriage of dev marketing and DevRel. But I just want to say, like, the live streams that our team does are amazing. It's like all run by the dev advocates. They do everything entirely by themselves. It's like a really awesome force.
So you've brought up what's a really good point, and something that we talk about quite a bit with our clients, right? Where broadly, for someone who's outside of the DevRel or dev marketing space or anything like that, it's really easy to look at kind of developer broadly as just like a line item on a budget and just be like, yeah, it's a developer team. They do developer stuff. But the closer you get to it, the more you kind of start learning about the nuances between someone who's in dev marketing, someone who's in DevRel, someone who's in dev advocacy. Eva, you started kind of going down that path, but I would love to hear from both of you, especially on two different sides of this. Like, what is, Eva, I'll start with you. What is a dev marketing person? What does that person own? And then Rizel, I'd love to hear kind of your side of it, of what's the other side of the house? What is more of that dev advocacy role, and kind of what are the differences between those two roles?
I would say, dev marketing really depends on the product. Like, I think the role is really shaped around what the product is and what the developer that is using the product is trying to build. It can kind of lean more product marketing, more dev programming, like I'm doing now, just based on the goals. I think there's one bit, if the product is like an enterprise dev tool, that's where the distinction becomes really clear, of like a marketing person doing more like life cycle and customer journey tracking. Sure. That's not something that a DevRel person would be working on, but the content that they would create would be crucial to putting it into that user journey. So I guess that's just one distinction. Really depends on the context of the product, how big the company is too. Is it a startup? Is it a larger corporation? That's just one example that is like really top of mind for me in terms of the distinction.
All right. And something very similar we chat about with our clients, like that definition 100% depends on the size and stage of maturity of your company, but is very often focused on, right, those metrics, getting people through the funnel, increasing awareness, engagement, conversion, and getting people into the ecosystem. But once developers start to engage with that ecosystem or the product or whatever that is, they need different touch points, which very often include dev advocacy. So Rizel, a perfect segue over to your side of the house.
Yeah, I would say when I think of dev advocacy, and I think a lot of people say this, we're kind of the bridge between the developer and the company.
Yeah.
So where we're talking with developers and figuring out, hey, what's not working for you. We're not necessarily doing this like we're a support team, but just being within the community. Maybe we're on social media or Discord or going to conferences and meetups. And then we're going back to the company, sharing that information. And on the company side, how we're helping them is bringing that awareness and adoption, but in a slightly different way than dev
Mhm.
marketing. But I will agree with Eva, or I will say similar to Eva, it looks different at different companies. Like at GitHub, I was very focused on content. Like that was like my main thing. The company was big enough or had enough support that that's what I could do. I could just write blog posts, tweet, go to conferences, and do live streams. But at Block, the support for tools like Goose are a little bit smaller, especially
Mhm.
since it's new. So I end up doing documentation. I
Yeah.
end up actually sometimes even writing code and contributing to the tooling. So it can vary from place to place, but my whole goal is to make sure that engineers are having a positive experience and that they're like adopting the product and we're helping to make it better.
So we've kind of talked about, between the two of you, the difference between these, but I think moving on, it's like, what's the overlap, right? You have these two related disciplines, marketing and dev advocacy, that aren't exactly the same, but obviously operate in the same space with the same audience, with developers. Where do you two overlap and how you work together?
I was just at an MCP night last night and everybody was talking about how like in person is back, hackathons are
Yeah.
back. Like I think we had a kind of a dip in all of that from like 2020 onwards, and like we're back. Our DevRel team has been really helpful for me in planning and organizing our upcoming hackathon in terms of like what prizes should we be offering? Like what are the prize categories? What do we want to be incentivizing people to build? What are some smaller features within Goose that we want to be highlighting as like prize areas, right? The whole kind of point of hackathons really is to get people building. And so how do we want to be incentivizing people to build? And then also all the judging hackathons is heavy, to go through everyone's code projects and do that. And so that's something that like a dev programming or dev marketing person would really rely on DevRel or dev advocacy to do the judging in particular. It's like really lift, technical heavy lift too, both.
It's crazy, right? It takes a village to do these different types of activations and event. And I think it's really easy, especially from that kind of like executive level, to just look at a calendar and be like, let's fill it up. We're going to fill it up with hackathons, with meetups, all these different things. But the lift required to do all of those is substantial, especially when they get big, especially when you scale up. And like you said, when you have an event that's oversold and you have to have kind of everyone on deck to handle that. Two really good examples. Just out of my own curiosity, how many dev meetups are y'all typically running a year in kind of the Block ecosystem?
We've done 4 in 4 months.
Yeah.
We've also been sponsoring a handful of events, and then we have our virtual live stream program. Rizel is running some awesome live streams right now.
We do that every week. We do a live stream every week. So yeah, I don't a lot. Maybe we could say one a month, maybe at least one a month, and then live stream every week.
So, and this I think leads to a really important question, right? Because this is a conversation we have a lot with our clients, right? How much should we be doing? How frequently should we be doing it? And right, you have these touch points. You said once a week touch points with the community. Why is it so important to have that high level of frequency of engagement with the community?
For me, I think because our product is so new, and MCP is so hot right now in AI agent, it's easy to get like forgotten among all the noise. Like it could be like 2 weeks later and we've like the industry and ecosystem has moved on to something else. So it's really important to like tap in, let the community know what like the new things or the new features that have been coming out. And kind of it's also a way for us to understand how they're feeling, because like when we like see them typing in the chat, it's easy to get a sense of like, oh, they're familiar with this part, or we might need to work on helping them understand this other area of our product better.
I love it. That's super helpful. And like personally for me, that's something I can carry into our client conversations. Rizel, we talked about this at the beginning, but I am keen to dig into it. So when I was looking kind of at your background and Googling you and going on your LinkedIn, I saw this really interesting GitHub video that you were featured in about using AI as a democratizing force. What does this mean and why is it so important?
Yeah, I think I had said that to explain that AI can help people who may not know how to code to be able to build cool products. It can do so many things though, like because AI understands natural language, even if you spoke a different spoken language, you can be able to interact with different technologies and coding tools, because a lot of code is American centric, or what's the word, like English, right? And so even if you were like from Brazil and spoke Portuguese and you're like, I really want to learn how to code, but there's all this documentation here, you can interact with AI and it could be like this democratizing force for you. Or maybe you're in an area where you can't like or a situation where you can't learn to code, like this is just an easy way for you to go back and forth with AI and learn. And I know a lot of people look at AI as like an inhibitor for developers, but I really think it's more of an accelerator for folks to be able to just build what they want. It shouldn't be like gate kept and like only certain people can code.
Which almost ties into the themes we've been talking about at the beginning about lowering barriers to entry, right? Reducing friction, lowering barriers to entry for a wider group of people. Tech is a notoriously hard field to break into, right? And the more people we can get into tech and working with tools in this space feels like a good thing. This is fantastic. We covered, I know it was like a half hour, but I feel like we covered so much in all of that. I think kind of just want to say thank you to both of you. Again, this is our first run at doing Bits and Bants. So congratulations on being the first two guests that we've had on here. Before we end, anything else that you want to make sure we get in this episode while we still have you here?
Could I say join our Discord?
You absolutely can. Tell us more about it.
Okay, so I believe the link is discord.gg/block-open source. I'll give you the link so that you can put in the show notes. But this is a Discord community for all of our Block open source projects. It's really fun. I think in there where we'll either help answer your questions or we have a little bit of banter, and you'll get notifications when some of our fun live streams come out. Like I mentioned, like we do like 5 coding challenges where people like team up against each other and they like have 7 minutes to build whatever like challenge app that we have. So it's a fun space, and I would encourage people to join.
Amazing. And again, something that's super helpful for us. We have a lot of clients who are spinning up Discord programs for the first time. A lot of them are like, what, can you give us a good example of what an active one looks like with an active community? So this gives us another one to point at. We really appreciate it. Eva, anything else from your end? Any last words of wisdom before we call it a day?
Yeah, I think that when there's joy put into the work that you're doing, it's like really felt in the output. And one thing that I love about the dev advocacy team on the Block open source team is that the team brings a lot of enthusiasm and passion for what they're working on. And you really see it in the live stream program. Rizel runs the Great Goose Off, which is a vibe coding competition. It's so fun. And I think that sort of light-hearted type of content can really appeal, and just the joy, the intention behind it really translates. And so enjoy the process, I guess, to have the best result.
And don't be afraid to have fun, right? The developer space is fun. You're creating stuff, right? Don't be afraid to have fun.
Don't be afraid to inject some personality into your brand. And I mean, at the end of the day, developers are people, right? And so having a little bit of that human touch and acknowledgement, I think, can go a long way.